My little house on Alder Street used to feel like a safe box for my life. It's painted a tired blue, with one porch step that complains every time I walk on it. I live in Portland, Oregon in the United States, and the air outside always smells like rain and coffee. Inside, my living room is plain. A gray couch, a lamp that flickers, and a small photo of me and my best friend, Jenna, smiling like we had no worries. Across the street, Mrs. Perez trims her roses and the mail slot sticks, so letters slide in slow, like bad news. The week before my graduation, the house went quiet in a way that scared me. I had a list of bills on the counter, and I kept telling myself I would pay them after one more shift at the campus library. But when I tried to buy eggs and bread at the corner store, the card reader flash declined. I tried my second ATM card. Declined again. The cashier, Noah, gave me a soft look, like he could see the heat in my face. I left with empty hands and a heavy throat. Back home, I called the bank and listened to hold music until my ears ached. A man finally answered and said my cards were blocked for unusual activity. I wanted to laugh because my life is not unusual at all. I asked him what I was supposed to do, and he said it could take time to review. Time felt like a door closing. That night I opened my laptop and stared at numbers that didn't care about my stress. Electric was $184.22. Water was $91.10. Internet was $79.99. My mortgage was due soon, $1,240, and I felt it like a stone in my chest. I counted the cash in my wallet twice. $17. I didn't have family money waiting in the wings. My stepdad, Mark, always said I should plan better, and my stepsister, Chloe, never seemed to worry about anything. So I did the one thing I swore I wouldn't do. I stopped paying the bills. I told myself it was only for a week, only until the bank fixed the mess. I tried to sleep, but my phone kept buzzing with happy graduation messages, and the quiet house kept listening. Then, just after midnight, my screen lit up with Mom's name. The night had been heavy and long. I had finally drifted asleep when my phone started ringing, slicing through the dark like an alarm I didn't set. The screen glowed with a name that made my heart skip, Mom. Her voice came through, trembling uneven. "Maya, my chest hurts," she gasped. "I think I'm having a heart attack. I'm going to the emergency room." For a second, I couldn't breathe. My hands went cold, and the air in my room thickened.
"What? Mom, slow down."
"Where are you?" "In the car with Mark," she said between sobs. "I don't know if I'll make it, sweetheart." Panic hit me like lightning. I grabbed my hoodie, keys, and wallet without thinking.
I didn't even lock the door behind me.
My car coughed to life, and I sped through the sleeping streets of Portland, the world blurring outside my window. I called her again, but she didn't answer. Every red light felt like a betrayal. My mind raced with every worst-case scenario I'd ever read about. Heart failure, blocked arteries, time slipping away. The idea of losing her before my graduation made my stomach twist. When I reached her neighborhood in Beaverton, the house was dark. No car in the driveway. No porch light. My stomach dropped. I called again. No answer. The silence was so deep it scared me. I pounded on the door, shouting her name. Nothing. I checked the side windows. Dark, empty. I was about to call 911 when my phone buzzed. It was a voicemail notification from Mom. Her voice played, soft but cheerful, completely different from the one that had been crying earlier. "Hi. Sorry. Can't come to the phone right now. Leave a message." But behind her voice, I heard faint clapping, music, laughter, and then a loudspeaker voice saying, "Welcome to the West Side Performing Arts Recital." My fingers went numb around the phone.
No,
that couldn't be right. I drove again, faster this time, until I reached the Performing Arts Center. The parking lot was packed. Families with flowers, little girls in sequins, proud parents taking pictures. None of it matched the picture I had in my head of a hospital and emergency lights. Inside, the air was thick with perfume and applause. I walked quietly down the hallway until I peeked through the auditorium doors. There she was, my mother, Linda, sitting upright in the third row, smiling, phone raised to record. Mark beside her, arms crossed, relaxed. On stage, Chloe, my stepsister, was twirling under the lights in a pink costume. My breath caught somewhere between anger and heartbreak. I stood there watching my mother laugh, healthy and whole, as if the woman who'd cried on the phone hadn't existed. I wanted to storm down the aisle, shout, "How could you?" But instead, I just stood frozen because a small, quiet part of me wasn't even surprised. This wasn't the first time she'd done something like this, made me rush to her rescue, only to find out she wanted attention, not help. But this time hurt more, maybe because it was the night before my graduation. When the music ended and the crowd clapped, I turned and walked out. My heart felt too big for my chest. In the car, I let my head fall against the steering wheel. My tears came hot and fast, but they weren't just from sadness. They were from clarity. I had spent years letting my mother's chaos steer my life. But sitting there in the dark parking lot, I made a quiet promise to myself. Tomorrow, at my graduation, I would walk that stage for me. Only me. For once, I wouldn't let her steal the moment. I sat in my car for a long time after I left the Performing Arts Center, staring at the steering wheel like it had answers. The parking lot lights made pale circles on the pavement, and families kept streaming out of the building, laughing and holding bouquets. I watched them like I was behind glass. My chest felt tight, not like a heart attack, but like anger had taken both hands and squeezed. I kept hearing my mother's sobbing voice in my head, and then I kept hearing the cheerful voicemail voice right after it. Those two voices didn't belong to the same moment, and yet they both belonged to her. When I finally drove home to my little blue house, the quiet hit me again. It wasn't the peaceful kind of quiet. It was the kind that makes you hear every tiny sound. The fridge humming, a pipe clicking, the soft scratch of tree branches against the window. I took off my shoes and stood in the kitchen, looking at the bills on the counter. The envelopes looked innocent, but they held weight. I thought about my cards being blocked, my unpaid electric bill, my empty fridge, and then I thought about my mother using an emergency room lie like it was a rope to pull me where she wanted me. I didn't sleep much. I kept waking up and checking my phone like a nervous habit, half expecting another call. When the sky finally turned gray, I gave up and made weak coffee. My hands shook a little when I poured it, and I hated that she still had that kind of power over my body. I sat at the kitchen table with my mug and opened my messages. Jenna had sent a photo of her cap with glitter letters that said, "Done." And she wrote, "We are really doing this tomorrow." I stared at her happiness and felt something twist inside me, something like joy trying to exist next to pain. Around mid-morning, I got a text from my mom. Just 2 words, "Call me." No apology. No explanation. Like, she had simply pressed pause on my life and expected me to press play for her. I put the phone face down. My throat burned, but I kept breathing. I told myself I didn't owe her my voice right now. I told myself I was allowed to be a person, not a service. Still, the anger wouldn't sit still. It walked around inside me, knocking into old memories. I remembered being 13 in Manchester, when we lived in a cramped rental with a leaky roof. Mom had promised to come to my school play, and I'd waited in costume behind the curtain, sweating under stage lights, searching the audience for her face. She never came. Later she said she'd been sick, but I found out she'd gone shopping with her friend Rachel and forgot the time. I remember telling myself it was fine because if I didn't make it a big deal, maybe she would love me more. That thought returned now like a bad song. If I stay small, she will stay kind. But last night proved that staying small didn't protect me. It only made me easier to move. In the afternoon, I forced myself to do practical things because practical things don't lie. I called the bank again and asked for a supervisor. I said my name clearly, spelled it, answered every question, and held my temper like a fragile glass. The supervisor, a woman named Sharon, told me my cards had been blocked after a fraud alert, and it would take time to verify. I wanted to scream that time was not something I could afford, but I didn't. I asked what I could do today. She finally offered a temporary solution. One card could be unblocked after extra identity checks, but the others would still be reviewed. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. When she confirmed it, I felt my shoulders drop for the first time in days, like my body had been braced for impact and could finally loosen. That evening, Jenna came over with a bag of takeout and 2 bottles of sparkling water. Like, she sensed I needed someone near me who didn't make me beg for basic care. She took one look at my face and said, "Okay, tell me what happened." I tried to explain without crying, but the story came out in pieces. My blocked cards, the bills, the graduation nerves, the phone call, the drive, the recital. When I said the part about the chest pain, Jenna's eyes went wide and sharp. She lied about the emergency room? Jenna said, like she was tasting the words and finding them poisonous. I nodded. I thought she was dying. Jenna let out a long breath through her nose, and her hands tightened around her drink. That's not drama, Maya. That's cruel. Hearing someone else say it made my skin prickle. I had lived so long translating my mother's behavior into softer language. She's emotional. She's stressed. She didn't mean it. She's complicated. Cruel was a harder word. It didn't leave room for excuses. We sat on my couch while the sky outside turned dark again. Jenna talked about tomorrow, about the ceremony location downtown, about parking, about which side my tassel should go on. Those details were small, but they felt like a rope I could hold on to. Every time my mind tried to drift back to my mother, Jenna pulled it back with something real and steady. Then my phone rang again.
Mom.
I stared at it until it stopped. A second later, another call. Then a text. "Why are you ignoring me?" Another. "I needed you." Another. "You never show up for this family." Jenna watched my face. "Don't answer if you don't want to." "I don't want to," I said, and the truth surprised me with how clear it was. "I'm just scared of what happens if I don't." "What happens?"
Jenna asked.
I swallowed. "She gets mad.
She cries.
She tells people I'm selfish.
Mark will send a message about respect.
Chloe will look at me like I'm a problem. And then I'll feel guilty until I forget why I was upset." Jenna leaned forward, elbows on her knees. "You don't have to do that cycle again." Her words sat in the room like a new object, unfamiliar but possible. I looked at my phone again, at the angry little bubbles of text. I picture my mom in the recital crowd, healthy and proud, and I picture myself on her porch, shaking with fear. The contrast made my stomach turn. I picked up my phone and typed a message. My fingers hovered for a second. Then I wrote, "I'm not talking tonight. You scared me on purpose. We can talk after graduation." I read it 3 times. It felt blunt. It felt dangerous. It also felt honest. I hit send before I could change my mind. Almost immediately, Mom replied, "I did not scare you on purpose. You're twisting it." I was stressed.
Chloe needed me.
"You always make everything about you." My hands went cold again, but this time it was different. This time I recognized the pattern like a map. First she panicked, then she pulled me in, then she blamed me for being pulled. I set the phone down. Jenna's voice softened. "Do you want to block her for the night?" I shook my head.
No.
"I don't want to fight. I just want quiet." So I turned my phone to silent and placed it in a drawer. The drawer closed with a solid sound that felt like a boundary. Later, when Jenna left, I stood at my kitchen sink and washed the takeout containers, even though I could have done it tomorrow. I did it because it made me feel like my hands belonged to me again. I looked at the bills stacked by the toaster, then at my graduation gown hanging over the chair. The bills were real, and the gown was real. My mother's lies were also real, but they didn't get to be the only real thing in my life. That night, I sat on my bed and opened an envelope from my aunt in Bristol. Inside was a card with a short note and a crisp amount of money, $200 tucked neatly like a secret. It wasn't a miracle. It wouldn't fix everything, but it was enough for groceries and gas. It was enough to get me to tomorrow without feeling like I was falling through the floor. I lay down and stared at the ceiling, letting myself imagine the graduation stage. I imagined the lights, the chairs, the sound of names being called. I imagined walking forward and not shrinking. I imagined clapping for myself in my own head because even if my mother never did it the way I wanted, I could still do it. Just before sleep finally came, I heard my phone buzz faintly from inside the drawer, like a distant insect.
I didn't get up to check.
I didn't let curiosity hook me. I kept my eyes closed and breathed slowly until my chest loosened. Tomorrow, I told myself, I would step into my own life. Tomorrow, I would choose my future over her performance. I woke up on graduation day before my alarm, the kind of early wake-up that feels like your body is already standing. My little blue house on Alder Street was still dark, and the rain had stopped, leaving the windows foggy and gray. I lay there listening to the quiet, waiting for my old panic to rush in. It tried, but it didn't take over. I thought about last night, about the drawer where my phone slept, and I reminded myself that today did not belong to anyone else. In the kitchen, I made toast and ate it slowly, like I was practicing patience. My graduation gown hung over the chair like a shadow with a purpose. The unpaid bills were still stacked by the toaster, but I didn't stare at them the way I had all week. I checked my bank app and saw the one card was still working. I paid what I could again, water this time, $91.10, then stopped. I didn't have to fix my whole life in one morning. I just had to show up for myself. Jenna arrived around noon wearing a bright smile and holding a small bag like it was a gift from the future. "Okay," she said, stepping into my living room. "Today we do the thing." She helped me pin my hair and smooth my gown, and when my hands started shaking, she held them and made me breathe with her. "You're not alone," she said. I didn't answer right away because I wasn't used to people saying that and meaning it. I just nodded and swallowed the tight feeling in my throat. Before we left, I opened the drawer and looked at my phone. There were more messages from Mom. Some were angry, some were sad, and some were both in the same sentence. "I can't believe you would do this to me. Then, I'm your mother. Then, you're ruining everything." I stared until the words stopped making sense. I didn't reply. I didn't explain. I just turned the phone to silent again and slipped it into my pocket like a stone I refused to throw. We drove into downtown Portland, and the city looked different when I wasn't rushing to save someone. The streets were busy with families and flowers and graduation gowns. The venue was loud with voices, like the whole building was humming. Inside, I saw other graduates lining up, adjusting caps and fixing sleeves. A guy named Ethan recognized me from a class and said, "We made it," and a woman named Rosa smiled and asked if I had an extra bobby pin. It felt strange to be part of a crowd that was celebrating instead of surviving. When the ceremony began, the lights dimmed and the room got quiet in a serious way. I sat with my hands folded in my lap, feeling my heart thump hard but steady. Names were called one after another, and every time someone walked across the stage, the crowd clapped like it mattered. I kept thinking about how close I had come to losing this moment to my mother's lie. I pictured myself last night outside the Performing Arts Center, shaken and small. Then I pictured myself now, sitting up straight, still here. When they called my name, Maya Hart, my whole body went warm. I stood and walked forward, and for a few seconds the noise faded into something soft. The stage lights were bright, and I could see faces in the crowd, but they blurred like water. I shook the dean's hand and accepted my diploma cover, and I heard Jenna's scream cut through everything. It wasn't polite cheering. It was loud, wild pride. I smiled so wide my cheeks hurt. I didn't feel perfect. I didn't feel rich. I didn't even feel fully safe. But I felt real, and that was enough. After the ceremony, Graduates spilled outside into the open air. People hugged and cried and took photos. Jenna handed me the friendship bracelet again, grad girl, and I laughed as I slipped it onto my wrist. We took pictures on the steps, and for a moment, I let myself enjoy it without scanning the crowd for trouble. Then my stomach tightened because I saw Mom near a tree, with Mark beside her. Chloe stood with him too, her arms folded, her face bored like she was waiting for the next thing. Mom walked toward me fast, like she was already mid-argument. "Maya," she said, sharp and breathless. "Why didn't you answer? I've been calling you all morning." Her eyes were glossy, but her voice was hard. Mark stood behind her with his jaw tight, the way he looked when he wanted to say something about respect. Chloe stared past me like I was a stranger. I felt the old reflex rise, apologize, explain, smooth it over, but I didn't follow it. I kept my voice calm. "Because you lied," I said. Mom's face changed, surprise flashing for a second. "You said you had chest pain," I continued. "You said you were going to the emergency room. I drove to your house in the middle of the night, terrified. You were at Chloe's recital." Chloe shifted, looking away. Mark's eyes narrowed like he wanted me to stop talking. Mom lifted her hands like she was pushing the blame away. "I was stressed," she said. "You don't understand how hard it is in this family. Chloe needed me and you." She stopped, then snapped. "You always make everything about you." The words were familiar, like a line she'd practiced. My chest tightened, but I kept breathing. "This was about me," I said. My voice shook a little, but it held. It was one day before my graduation. My cards were blocked. I stopped paying my house bills because I couldn't. I needed support, not a fake emergency. Mom stared like she didn't recognize me. Jenna stepped closer to my side, quiet and steady. I looked at my mother and felt something sad settle in me, like finally accepting the shape of a wound. "If you ever have real chest pain," I added softly, "call 911.
Don't call me as a test."
Mom's mouth opened, then closed. Mark said, "Let's go," like he was done with the scene, and he guided her away. Chloe followed without looking back. Mom glanced over her shoulder once, but she didn't say sorry. She didn't ask if I was okay. She just looked upset that I hadn't played my old role. Jenna and I drove back to my blue house on Alder Street, and the porch step creaked under my feet like it always did. Inside, the bills were still on the counter and the money problems were still real. But I set my diploma cover beside the envelopes, and the sight of it made me feel stronger. I wasn't magically fixed. I wasn't suddenly free from stress. But I had done something I'd never done before. I had protected my own moment. I stood in my kitchen and let the quiet wrap around me, not like a threat this time, but like a promise I was finally learning to keep.